Happy Halloween, Stu.
Oh, happy Halloween, Dave.
Are you going to give out hot pennies and razor blades?
No, I'm not going to do that to the little kids. I was approached by kids out in the hallway just now.
They better not ring on my door. And I'll tell you what, Stu. I will leave the
save all this
vitriol for later
for Christmas when you want to come out.
We'll be ripping down Christmas decorations later in the year, but let's focus on Halloween. I won't do anything to the kids. It's not their fault. They have those parents. The parents, on the other hand, some of them, like that scumbag on the 15th floor in our building.
I don't think you should name names.
I'm not going to name him, but he's short, unattractive, and bald.
I don't think you should identify this any further.
Okay, said enough. Yes. But I would like to see him bite into one of my apples with a razor blade.
I don't think you should really do any more on this one.
That's it. I hate him. For fun. It's fun. It's like sport. But anyway, Stuart, I'm sorry to digress.
Yes.
You know, I've always mentioned to you, Stuart, that whenever you speak, the world reacts. The next, Lizzo went on a diet, everything. There's been a lot of events. Well, I spoke about the Menendez trial and how they were hoping to get a resentencing decision. And the LA District Attorney George Gascon last week announced that he's going to recommend resentencing such that they'll be eligible to for parole. Now, this does not free them, and it kind of sidesteps actually recommending a lower sentence or reconsideration in light of the evidence about the sexual.
So are you suggesting that he took a kind of mini step instead of an aggressive act?
Well, yeah, because this guy, it has been a disaster as the DA. He's not fat Alvin Bragg because he's thin, but he is the LA equivalent. He is reviled in LA. In one of the more liberal cities, he is 30 points behind his opponent, who's an independent, who's planning to come in and clean it up. He was funded by George Soros, who is a scumbag and a crook and a tax cheat. He has caused chaos and crime throughout the city of LA.
How many times has he been elected?
I think this is his first time around, and there was also a effort to recall him, which was unsuccessful. But at the end of the day,
like 2/3 or 3/4,
something like that. Yeah, it sounds like he's going to get the same treatment as that guy in San Francisco. Was named Chastain Bourdain or Bourdain. He got recalled. He was another one of these left-wing prosecutors who let in criminals out on the street. Now, in the Menendez case, there were people in his office who felt that they should not get a resentencing because they felt they were guilty. I mean, there's still a lot of residual people who don't have much sympathy for these two, although, they have been in prison for over 30 years and they have graduated college. They're both married, by the way. So you single ladies, no hope for you. But at the end of the day, even though I have my own doubts about the older brother, he does seem like he's a sociopath if you saw the Netflix show and you've heard some of the stuff. But look who raised him. These kids were 18 and 21. If we're going to let common felons out on the street to fair jump, harass, and abuse and shoot up drugs on our street, these two have actually paid their debt to society and they have been exempt. I don't think they've had issues in prison. So, the reason why the liberal or these, I think a lot of people resent them because they came from a wealthy family and they want them to suffer.
I just feel, as I think I suggested when the subject came up several weeks ago, that these guys just would be treated differently today if they were prosecuted. And that failure to get that evidence in the retrial, is just a sad thing. And I think they've paid more than enough price under the circumstances. That's the way I feel.
I agree too. So this is kind of a positive development. And frankly, I take a hard line when it comes to pedophiles. I think that we are not harsh enough with them. I think they should get the death penalty. There's no forgiveness for being a pedophile. And I mean that for Woody Allen and all the rest of them, and Roman Polanski and that scumbag Bill Clinton, all of them. And what you do to children...
Who is a pedophile?
Well, I'm overstating it. Okay. But let me have my fun. He's a rapist, not a pedophile. For rapists...
What rape was it?
Juanita Broderick.
And what was the age there?
Apparently, he forced himself upon it, and she's testified to it. And
oh, yes. That,
yeah, and I mean, I believe her over him any day of the week. Listen, I would believe anyone over him. I would believe Donald Trump over him.
Okay.
I mean, seriously. But at the end of the day, this is a positive development, and I think it's, good. And I don't want to give George Gascon credit for anything because he's a scumbag, and I'm going to enjoy it when he gets thrown out of office because he deserves it.
Okay. I'm glad you ended on a quite positive note with some sensitivity toward these two grown men now.
Every now and then I got to break the mold.
Oh, it's a mistake. I know you feel that way.
I do. I'm kind of going to have to shower after this.
Okay, let me see. I got a note here. Oh, a couple of weeks ago, I saw something about a televangelist that started to set me thinking. So I went back into the, online to review some of the televangelists we've had who have turned out to be a pretty sleazy group. And I just wanted to recount a few of them, the brief tales about each, and then talk about this current incident that got my attention. And I'll call it kind of the Hall of Shame, I suppose. First, Jimmy Swaggart. Now, older people will remember these guys. People under 25 won't even know who I'm talking about. But Jimmy Swaggart was a televangelist, and he was caught on several occasions with hookers. And then he went on in his, he went to his church. These guys always had large churches. And he went to the church, and he blamed it all on the demons.
Yeah.
And I say tearful in quotes, this was the worst acting job. I saw it online. It was the worst acting job I've ever seen. In a tearful service, and he begged for forgiveness. Okay. People seem to love that when televangelists beg for forgiveness after sinning. So he then got another ministry he got back into his own ministry again. Okay, item number 2. Pat Robertson. Now this goes back to the last century. And in 1986, he was running for president. He boasted, and this is the old resume trick that gets people sometimes, and you'd probably say Pocahontas on a resume. But
you mean Senator Elizabeth Warren, the Native American fraud?
Native American. But in this case, Pat Robertson spoke of and wrote of his being a Marine combat officer in Korea. Now, it just so happened, and if that's true, I mean, I can't imagine what the hardship was there for anyone who had to be over there in the cold and losing toes and frostbite and death and all that. Unfortunately, others who were with him said it really didn't happen that way, said he never was in Korea, that while he was on the boat, he called his dad, who was then a congressman in Virginia and an important congressman in defense appropriations. And apparently, according to several witnesses, said he called his dad, and his dad arranged for him to get taken off the ship along with 2 or 3 other guys, and they went to Japan. So he was not a combat Marine in Korea. He might have gone through a lot of training, as he said he did, and that's fine, but he was not. So that's a lie. And that's these days.
These days, you could be vice president. Look at Tampon Tam.
Veterans use this as a question of stolen valor. And when you get that, it's got a certain ring to it. I'll go into that another day because there are some people who try and follow these cases because they're all over the place with people suggesting they were more than they were. Finally, as a backdrop to the current situation, there's Jimmy and Tammy Faye Bakker.
There's a Broadway show of Tammy Faye.
Oh, yeah.
It just opened, and she's become an icon.
Oh, well.
She's an icon to the gay community.
Is she still alive?
I'm not sure.
They got divorced in something like 1992. Oh, and she complained. See, one of her problems was she was a drug addict. Apart from all the addiction she had to lipstick, which was...
and probably plastic surgery.
And she was a drug addict, and she made a statement at one point saying she didn't know you could get in trouble from having a lot of non-prescription drugs. Okay, but Jimmy, I don't want to say fell in love, but he fell in lust with a church secretary on Long Island, whose name was, what was it?
Jessica Hahn.
Jessica Hahn. Now, I've seen pictures of Jessica back then, which I don't remember from back then, but I saw them recently. What a stunner, and I can understand why Jimmy was excited in that case, but not essentially with his wife. And that went on for, 7 years or so. And the guy, but it was an interesting case because Jimmy wanted to sit in the corner and watch his wife Becky have sex with this former pool attendant.
We're talking about the Falwells now.
Oh, conscious. Did I slip into the Falwell?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. So Jimmy just had to work with Jessica Hahn.
Right, and she did a penthouse centerfold. And all that.
That was later. Yeah. And then he.
She's a hero.
She drifted into less than hero worship. She got paid $275K at one point for her silence in the matter. Jimmy wanted to pay her off. It eventually got clawed back. Anyway, so Jimmy, though, was doing other bad things and stealing money from all the flock that they ministered to. By the way, they had 13 million viewers a day on their network. 13 million viewers a day. And he urged people to donate. And they donated diamonds and minks and deeds and the like. Anyway, he got convicted of 24 counts of fraud. He went to jail. He was sentenced to 45 years in jail, but only served 5. But again, the people welcomed him back in a community, in some kind of ministry in Missouri. Now the present, the Jerry Falwell that I read about, and what I read about.
You're talking about Jerry Falwell Jr.
Jr., very important.
Not the father, right.
Not the father, very important. Jerry Falwell Sr. founded Liberty University in Virginia, a Christian college, and was dedicated to all the right virtues of kindness, integrity, and good things and good people. Well, that comes into question.
It's the Yale for the deplorables.
It's a good idea. It was a good idea. But so, okay, Jerry there dies, and Jerry Sr. dies. Jerry Jr. steps into the position. And then his wife, Becky, but Jerry Falwell Jr. apparently liked the idea of watching his wife while the wife was having sex with a former pool attendant. And that relationship went on for about seven years or so. And eventually, though, the most recent event is they came to some global settlement. Liberty University and Jerry Falwell Jr. came to a global settlement of what? Well, Jerry Falwell Jr. had been, he took a leave of absence in shame from this whole thing once it came out. And the pool attendant had auditory recordings and texts demonstrating that it was the real thing. They had him dead to rights. Now, what did Liberty University, why should they even be involved with some settlement of any litigation? Well, it appears that their skirt might not have been clean with respect to Title IX protection of innocent ladies, probably.
Well, I also think he may have done it with students, too.
Don't know. I didn't know.
I thought I heard that, but I don't. But I
heard it on the street, or do we want to call it?
I thought I listened to a podcast a long time ago.
I'll take that as gospel.
It could be true.
And but at any rate, they reached in kind of an insidious global agreement in July or August. In July, each side said that they would how'd they put it? They would apologize for their errors in judgment, and did not define any of those errors. And they welcomed him back to campus. And I thought that was just a horrid step for a university to take, to end up in the gutter, in the trash, with
a scumbag.
Wrongdoer. Yeah.
Well,
I had him by the scrotum, is what I think.
Where is he now? Is he running the university?
I don't know, but he was welcomed back. Whether he has an official position,
I thought he had to resign. But you know what's funny?
At one point he said it's just a leave of absence. Then he resigned. But under this thing, he's welcomed back. Whether that's in July.
Do you think he'll plan more three-ways with some of the fraternities?
That's an interesting question.
Yes. I mean, what's so fun, he used to go to Miami and stay at the Fontainebleau, I believe, which is like a big hotel down there. That was the pool attendant. And he was getting into real estate deals with this guy and all this stuff.
Yes, he did. He set him up in business.
And he was using, I believe...
I listened to that guy in an interview, and I have to say, the young kid, no longer a young kid.
No.
He seemed like a very responsible, honest kid. And he was not taken in. He was attracted to a very attractive woman, and she was attractive at the time. And it's hard to say that I know what I would have done under the circumstances. I would have said, let me in.
I mean, there was no skin off his back, and he was probably getting something out of it, right?
And he wasn't, but there was Jerry watching it all in the corner. I mean,
what a cretin. What a cretin.
I feel sorry for the university that they felt themselves in the position they had to get down in the dirt. And...
Well, you know what's funny is he's fallen. This apple fell far from the tree because the father, you may not have agreed with him, you may not have liked him, but he was. I mean, I know people will get mad for me for saying this because they dislike him so much, but he was a respectable person.
Yeah. And what is it, though, about these televangelists? It seems to be a string of some of the biggest that constantly be shown to be hypocritical and scum-like, getting into criminal.
Well, they're a lot like our politicians, Stu.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think also what happens is maybe some of them do start off with kind of a sincere intent. Yes. And I think the money, the power, it gets to them.
The money, the power, the glory of it all.
Right. I mean, look at, like, for example, in the Falwell situation, he was a second generation. He never created any of the stuff. He just walked into it when his father died. Yep. He's like the Kennedys. Look how they all turned out. A bunch of drug addict losers, most of them. And not the generation like Ted. Well, Ted was an alcoholic and a murderer. But, like, they had the first generation. And the second generation has been a collection of a lot of problems. Not all of them.
Yes.
Some of them have lived respectable lives. And with all that money in trust fund, they had so much struggle, poor kids.
Yeah, right.
But, the televangelists are very much like our politicians, which kind of gets us transitioned to some of the topics.
Yes.
Because in a couple of days, Stuart, we're going to have the election day. We can already vote here in New York, and we had early voting started much later than in everywhere else because New York is such a dysfunctional hot mess of a state.
Oh, it worked fine.
Yeah, but the thing is, they could have done this a month ago. They could have counted the votes efficiently. They don't do anything right here, and the reason they don't do anything right, Stuart, is because who's in charge? That's all I'm going to say. But before I start, I want to give out a Profile and Courage Award to Jeff Bezos he owns the Washington Post.
Yes.
For the first time in history, the Washington Post is not endorsing a candidate because he is afraid that if Trump is elected, he thinks that Trump will go after his business interests. So, and the LA Times did a similar thing. Now, no one's going to care what the Washington Post does, and everyone knows who they were going to vote for, which would have been Kamala. They have not ever endorsed, I believe, in their history, a Republican for the president. And it just gets me that these big swaggering billionaires enable Donald Trump to be a bully because they're such fearful little girls. Bezos should stick to cheating on his wife and building yachts. He shouldn't be running newspapers. It's a disgrace. And he should live the rest of his life in shame. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, Stu, because there's more. Okay? I've never seen anyone with no backbone, that bald little piece of garbage. Although I will say Amazon is convenient. But in addition to that, Stu, I will admit that I voted early.
Yes, I did.
I'm going to tell you who I voted for soon.
Yes.
But before I get into it, I also want to note that in the last two elections, I was so disgusted by Donald Trump, so loathsome of his behavior, his vulgarity, his corruption, all of it, that I pulled the trigger for one of the most loathsome women in American history, Hillary Rodham Clinton. I can't believe I voted for her. I'm going to admit it. I'm ashamed that I did it, but I had no choice. I also voted with less trepidation, I'll say, although that was a mistake, for that disgusting plagiarist, liar, senile old fool. I know you're going to guess who I said this, but Joe Biden. And I was actually happy and relieved when he won, thinking things might be a little more stable under his rule. Obviously, that was a mistake too. But before we even get to that, let's talk about what's going on the ballot in New York State, right? They have a Proposition 1, and Proposition 1 is called the Equal Rights Amendment, and it amends the Constitution of New York to protect for discrimination, particularly they're selling it as a right to enshrine the right to an abortion in the New York State Constitution in light of the Supreme Court decision. However, if you read it, it looks pretty simple and pretty benign, but it also has something in there about preventing discrimination against people based on national origin. Now, you might think that's fine and we shouldn't be doing that, but I have a funny feeling the liberals are up to something. The New York City Council already voted once to allow illegals to vote in council elections. It was overturned in the court. And I have a funny feeling this is so broadly written, they're going to use this as a subterfuge to get illegals to vote. So we should all be voting against this, because nowhere else in the world does anyone consider letting non-citizens vote except in San Francisco and New York City, run by these progressive anti-Semitics like Jamal Bowman and all these pro-Hamas people. And now they want to disenfranchise citizens like ourselves so that people who aren't even allowed to be here can vote. And now I am supposing all of this, but we cannot trust them. They've tried it already. And I have looked this up, Stuart. There are, if you look worldwide, in New Zealand, if you have lived there for a year, as a resident, you're allowed to vote in their elections, even if you're not a citizen. In the EU, if you are an EU citizen, you can vote in European Parliament elections and local elections from another EU country. And in Uruguay, if you've been there for 15 years, but you're a resident, not a citizen, you can vote. And finally, in South Korea, 3 or more years, and you can vote. Now, that's not what these liberals are trying to do. And it seems preposterous for them to talk about how anti-democratic the Trump campaign is and the Republicans, yet they're trying to disenfranchise American citizens. That's what they're doing. And this is just one of the many tips of the iceberg. And so I would encourage people, no on Proposition 1, no for this liberal garbage. We have to start standing up to what they've done to our cities, the crime they've allowed, and the disorder, the garbage all over the place, and the rest of it.
Well, I can say that I received only something in the mail. I really hadn't. Usually you get things, information about propositions in the mail. I didn't this time, except from one of the city council people, Caroline Rivera.
Yeah, she's our councilwoman.
And so seeing what she wanted and what she despised, and her being on the left side of things substantially, I made my decisions.
Based on, well, so it was. She's part of the problem, or she's not the only problem. But it's not just these local people. I will acknowledge Donald Trump is a disastrous buffoon. That rally he had at Madison Square Garden this weekend was like a clown college with, Hulk Hogan there ripping off his shirt, the vulgar comedy, the racist joke about Puerto Rico and the rest. But unlike what Hillary Rodham Clinton says, that disgusting liar who allowed her husband to abuse women and she defended him, she referred to it as a Nazi rally. Biden referred to Trump supporters as garbage, and then he tried to retract it.
Yeah, well,
who is the garbage? His son is garbage. He's going to jail. Trump is not going to jail, by the way, and it will be highly unlikely if he ever will.
We'll see.
We'll see. But that's my speculation. And Kamala was also, in her desperate last grasp, was on the campaign calling him a fascist. It seems they're getting very desperate, and I'm sick of Democrats talking about anti-democratic tendencies of Donald Trump and how he's a fascist and a Nazi and all the rest. They're the ones, and their party, a good chunk of them, are supporting Hamas. And Hamas wants to kill Jews. Who's the Nazi? Second of all, let's talk about a party that wants to do away with democratic norms. They have proposed, and Kamala is behind this, to pack the Supreme Court and add justices because they don't like the fact that Trump appointed conservative judges, which is what happens in elections. So that's one thing, and it's outrageous. FDR tried it, and it didn't work. They want to now eliminate the filibuster, which was intended to make the Senate a deliberative body, because they can't get their radical agenda through with their narrow votes.
I think it has. I think it's been effective in its own way over time. And while it's irritating to many, I believe it deserves to stay in place.
Absolutely. They want to amend the Constitution to eliminate the Electoral College, because Abraham Lincoln wouldn't have been president without the Electoral College. I'm sure the Democrats' history is so light and so scant they don't even know that. Not only that, in defiance of numerous court rulings, they have continued this effort to forgive student loans without getting legislative authority. Why should someone who didn't go to college have to pay off the loans of someone who did not, right? Is that democratic?
I had, in law school, I had a national defense loan, and it was part scholarship, part loan. And the percentage of each would go up or down according to how well I performed. And of course, since I didn't perform awfully well, the percentage of loan increased, and the percentage of gift decreased. However, the feature that I thought was important back then, and I think would be a vast improvement on this, give them a whole break, is to say if you go into public service of some kind, which is what they did at that time, and I think in other
yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
No problem. If you say go for a few years and you get a percentage reduction for every year of
public service, right?
Service, legitimate.
But to outrightly forgive it without legislative approval in defiance of court rulings, that's anti-democratic. It is also, they talk about free speech in the First Amendment, but the Biden administration put pressure on social media companies to censor what was posted on their websites. And apparently the free speech only works if it's in favor of them. And then finally, I'm going to say this, which is true. They have abused our criminal justice system and the prosecutorial system to go after their political enemies, most notably Donald Trump. Most of their cases are not exactly successful, Stuart. And I do not believe he will ever see the light of a jail cell, unlike Hunter Biden. And when he is elected president, if that were to happen, I have a funny feeling they're going to get a taste of their own medicine. And they deserve it. Every last one of them. And if there's any criminal family in this country, it is the Clinton Foundation and the way they have raised funds. If there was ever an investigation of that, I can only imagine what they'd find, because those two have made millions, hundreds of millions of dollars through graft, influence peddling, and corruption. That's what she did as Secretary of State. She never negotiated a treaty. She never did anything that anyone can note to me of any kind of consequence for the world other than line her and her husband's pockets. They have a nice house in the Hamptons. They have a house in Chappaqua, God knows where else, and hundreds of millions of dollars.
So, say, just with respect to the records case down in Florida, I think there's a very substantial case.
Maybe.
Well, I think we would have seen it. Of course, if you want to talk about bias, I suggest that bias and probably ignorance, that may come into play with respect to that lady, the female judge, who had very little experience, except she was just chosen out of a coin toss. And I think, of course, if Trump gets into office, that prosecution will not go forward any further.
Probably not.
And I think that's a mistake. And I think that is certainly an exception to what you were saying about, unjust cases going forward.
Maybe, you know something? I don't buy anything they sell anymore, the Democrats. I don't trust a thing they do, because they have lied to us for years. They are disgusting. They are race-baiting, DEI, BLM-supporting communists. And I have had it. Trump is not wrong when he calls them communists. They want to transform America in a very negative way. They want to take away our fruit.
No, leave the cat alone. That's cute.
My cats come to visit while we talk.
I love it.
And then listen to this. That 78-year-old pervert was out on the campaign trail in Arizona, and he's stumping for the Democrat candidate who's expected to win for Senate. He is running against this, what's her name? Carrie Lake, yes. Right? Who is a complete buffoon, right? And while he was on the stump, he was mentioning the guy's Ruben Gallego, I think his name is. He was mentioning his humble upbringing, that he may not be attractive like Carrie Lake, but he's a more admirable candidate. So this perverted old 70-year-old man who barely looks like he's going to last much longer still can't keep it in his pants. And he's drooling over some complete MAGA Republican. It's ridiculous. The guy is a disgrace. Why they would allow him on the campaign trail is beyond me.
Well, they really didn't want him there because they're fearful of what he might do, and he's come up with some gaffes along the way.
Oh, yeah.
If they could put him in a closet, they would have done so.
Well, he doesn't belong in a closet. He belongs in a prison cell, right with his wife. And I have had enough of the Democrat Party, Stuart. So when I went and voted, for the first time in the 3 election cycles, I decided enough is enough. And I voted for Trump, not for him. I voted against the Democrats, and hoping he'll die in office and Vance will take over. And then when there was no choice between a Democrat and a Republican on the ballot, which is the case here in New York, I wrote in my daughter, because I am never voting for one of those people again after the high inflation, the illegal immigration, the social engineering, the COVID lockdowns, the DEI, the reparations, the crime, the filth. Enough is enough. They all need to go and be sent a message. And I don't know what's going to happen on Election Day, but if Trump is to win, you better lock your door, because those people are going to riot and loot worse than BLM. I have finished my rampage, Stuart, and I may have run us out of time as well, unfortunately. And but that is kind of my big announcement. Trump 2024!
Well, I'll just say that I fear Trump, and I despise Kamala and think she's a weak sister and incapable of taking the office and doing a good job. But faced with those two, I voted for Harris and held my nose.
Well, I held my nose also, but I was also motivated by spite. I want to see all those liberals crying and shrieking and whining, because I have had enough of walking out on my city street. I pay taxes. I am sick of what these people have done. There's no excuse for it. None whatsoever. But we'll see what happens on Election Day. We can reconvene next week and to discuss. And in the interim, are you going to be trick-or-treating, getting any treats?
I won't be trick-or-treating. But I'll be having a couple of rehearsals, including one tomorrow for my performance at the Bedford Playhouse on November 10, the performance of Vietnam Through My Lens.
I encourage people to go see it because Stuart has some significant things to say and perform about. I also encourage you to have other people listen to this podcast.
Oh, today I was talking to a number of folks who are interested in we'll see. I told them you rant a lot. I told them I try and keep you blunted to some degree.
I'm out of control. There's no hope. Stuart, this is a job you can't win. But anyway, all right. Well, I guess we'll convene again.
Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye.